I gave this platform to God, okay? I'm on a very specific mission.
We have to identify who the real enemy is. We have to know, where does this infiltration come from? The American people need a warrior that's unafraid to point out the real enemy. The American people are deserving of truth, exposure, and extreme accountability for the crimes against humanity that are being committed. We're on the brink of the complete collapse of America, while at the same time at the precipice of an amazing victory. If we want to prevent our children from facing a future bloodbath, I'm talking mass amounts of bloodshed, we need to step up and fight this war, and we need to fight it now. Uncensored. I refuse to be silenced or muzzled. Unafraid. No man will intimidate me. Unstoppable. Happy Monday, good evening, and welcome to the Stu Peters Show. So on Sunday, an active duty service member set himself on fire in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. in protest of America's continued support of this disgusting Jewish-run genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Now, from what we know so far and from what we've seen on video, the airman identified himself as 25-year-old Aaron Bushnell, an active duty member of the United States Air Force who declared before dumping gasoline all over his head and lighting himself on fire that he would, quote, no longer be complicit in genocide, end quote. After lighting himself up, Bushnell screamed, "Free Palestine," at the top of his lungs repeatedly before armed federal law enforcement officers arrived on the scene and extinguished the flames. Though it was initially reported that Bushnell survived and was taken to a hospital in critical life-threatening condition, it's now being reported that he died of his wounds, which most would expect given the severity of the flames and the amount of time that nearly his entire body was burning. Thus far, very little, if any, information about his political views or religion has been made public, but as we continue seeing, calls for an end to this war in Gaza are reverberating across many, many groups of people. Now, we're going to take a look at this video. If you have children in the room, please turn their direction elsewhere. The video is censored, his body is blurred out as the flames start, but the audio is on and viewer discretion is still advised. Keep in mind, this form of protest is extremely rare in the United States.
Aaron Bushnell. I am an active duty member of the United States Air Force, and I will no longer be complicit in genocide. I'm about to engage in an extreme act of protest, but compared to what people have been experiencing in Palestine at the hands of their colonizers, it's not extreme at all. This is what our ruling class has decided will be normal.
Sir?
Free Palestine!
Hey!
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Man's on fire! Man's on fire!
Get on the ground! Free Palestine!
Hey! Get on the ground! On the ground! On the ground! Get on the ground!
That footage is tragic. No matter who you are, and no matter what you think about the war, that is an American military member lighting himself on fire, taking his own life, because he thought that that was the best way to stand up to the Israelis for their genocide of the Palestinians and his own government for their support of it. This is an awful and horrific tragedy. an American service member is dead because our own government will not hear us out on the taxpayer-funded slaughter of women and of children and of other innocents in Palestine. This guy's actually in the military. For him, this entire Israel-Palestine situation was even more real. And he had psychos trying to send him and his buddies to war daily over this. One of them was the notoriously Israel First Jewess Laura Loomer, who mocked Bushnell's death in a post that she made on X. And in her disgusting post, Loomer let us all know where she stands. She stands with Israel, and she wants Americans, especially white Christian men, and especially those who volunteer to serve in our armed forces, to sit down and shut up and prepare to fight Israel's war. Loomer even called this guy, on the day of his death, a traitor to his country, which is pretty ironic, given that he swore an oath to defend the United States of America, not Israel, from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And this includes our Constitution, which is being shredded every single day on behalf of Israel and on behalf of Ukraine and other countries that hate us, but want to use the lives of our young men to expand their territories. And speaking of irony, how about Loomer's line on mental illness? Could Aaron Bushnell have been mentally ill? Yes. Yes, of course. He could have also been completely genuine. We just don't know yet. But regardless, he's now dead. But before slamming others as mentally ill for mutilating themselves in the way that Bushnell did, maybe Loomer should take a look in the mirror. This is a woman who's been engaging in body modification for years, a telltale sign of a mental illness. Lucas Gage is a veteran and a service member, and he joins us now for more on this. Lucas, you've been censored all over the place for calling for the same thing that Bushnell called for. Thank God and thank you for not lighting yourself on fire.
Yeah, it's a tragedy, of course. And, what's even more shocking than his death is the reaction to his death from people like Laura Loomer and others who are of Jewish ethnicity, who claim to be Americans, but they want to be Israel first. And they're showing their true colors, mocking his death, just like the Israelis mock these little babies in their Telegram groups. This is what I'm seeing on Twitter. People are sending me screenshots of people saying, burn, baby, burn, and all this other stuff. Or he was a Hamas rapist supporter. How do you know he was? He said, free Palestine. And I made a rant earlier, Stu, and I said, he didn't do this for the people who went over the wall. He did this for all the people getting crushed under the rubble. That's what this man took his life for. And it is an extreme form of protest. But you know what? They also do this in Asia. A lot of monks will burn themselves to death to protest the wars that are going around in their areas. So it is shocking to see. But you know what really bothers these Israeli firsters and Jewish supremacists is that he died not for Israel. He died for the people of Palestine. He sacrificed his life in front of the Israeli embassy, which is now marked forever with this man's grave, in a sense. Because when people look at the embassy, they're always going to see and remember that this person took his life there. Because had he thrown some blood on himself and said, free Palestine or something like this, they would arrest him and put him away. But he took his life, Stu. And yeah, it's not the best way to protest. Honestly, you're going to die. But he made a message that has gone across the entire planet that will stick with people forever and forever mark that embassy for what it is, a embassy that promotes genocide using our taxpayer dollars and our troops.
U.S. military service members sign up for a couple of reasons. One of them is to protect the sanctity of the borders of the United States of America, a core duty that our military has completely turned its back on at this point. People swear an oath to the Constitution and to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, because they want to protect the American people and their children from any harm that may come from a physical invasion, and obviously to stand up for humanity in the face of war crimes, which is exactly what's happening in Israel right now. That's what Aaron Bushnell did. He did it in his uniform, and as a serviceman, he stood up for the people of Palestine against the Israelis who are committing atrocious war crimes.
You know, Stu, had he lit himself on fire and said free the hostages and died for Israel, they would have made a Hollywood film for him the next day. They would have erected a shrine in the middle of Tel Aviv. That's what they would have done. But he did it for the people, namely the children, the men, women, and children, innocent, non-enemy combatants who are being mass murdered by the OIF, the Israeli Offensive Force. Because, Stu, the Israelis aren't defending themselves. They've been on the attack and on the offense for 75 years, and we are paying for it to this day. So not only did he do this for the Palestinians, but also the American taxpayer and his fellow troops, because he didn't want to be involved in the genocide anymore. He didn't want to be complicit in it. And, you know, when you sign the dotted line, you take orders. You know, I was deployed to Iraq twice. I didn't know any better. Had I known better, I would have never joined. But people are starting to realize that something's off here. What are we gaining with this unbreakable bond with Israel? Absolutely nothing. I mean, our security of the troops are in danger. They're getting attacked at all the bases in the Middle East. We're losing trillions of dollars, sending all the money to all these different wars, billions to Israel, billions to Ukraine. Like you mentioned, our borders wide open. Trains are being derailed. People are homeless in the street.